The Saga of Fastillion Lemonde, Book 2, Man of Many Waters, by Richard T. Schrader. Copyright 2013. All rights reserved. Chapter 1. The Council of Elders. After Fastillion had finalized his formal business transaction with Twisted Feathers to acquire his daughter in marriage, the three of them merrily returned to the Micmac's roundhouse with the remainder of the boat's baggage. They entered to find Silvertree busily cooking over the central fire. The room was stifling hot because she had left the draperies closed over the four windows and also the door. Barely enough air seeped around the hide barriers to let the smoke properly ventilate out the hole in the roof. Twisted Feathers restrained his dislike for the woman while he opened the drapes to cool off the room and freshen the air. Once he had them open, he said, "My home is far enough out of the way that she won't see anything outside of any importance." He didn't speak to her directly, even though he meant his words for her ears. There is no reason for her to keep the windows covered. Fastillion unpacked while raining sunshine helped her friend prepare the evening meal. The meeting of the council elders would begin at moonrise. He wasn't sure if he wanted to dress in his usual fashion or start adopting habits more in line with Micmac customs. Since he didn't own one of the toga-like robes they preferred to wear during ceremonies, he settled on old habits. The iron manacles on Silvertree's ankles jingled noticeably with her every step. She didn't complain about them, and they didn't prevent her from getting about or being a superb cook. Fastillion had brought 2 skins of wine with him, and he drank some with his dinner. He was resolute about maintaining his habit, and so thought it best to get it out in the open immediately. Silvertree also enjoyed strong drink and gratefully accepted some when he offered it to her. Twisted Feathers dressed for the meeting in his finest garb, with his full headdress. When the time came, he led Fastillion to the council fire of the village elders. Neither of them carried any weapons aside from their utilitarian knives. The Micmac elders held their meetings at the center of the North Village. A large bonfire burned in the middle of an enormous circular assembly area. The builders had recessed the open-aired chamber into the ground like a roundhouse's foundation. They had lined it in white flagstone and placed 2 rings of seats made from log sections. The village's 20 councilmen occupied the inner ring, while the outer ring was for about 5 dozen of their most respected warriors. Each of the men in the outer ring had at least a dozen large feathers in their headdresses as proof of their accomplishments. The elders didn't allow women to attend their meetings, and only men of distinction had seats around the council fire. A special summons from a councilman was required for any lesser-ranked man to sit in. Fastillion sat on the outermost foundation wall with the grass at his back, while Twisted Feathers took his seat of honor in the warrior's ring. The councilmen with their facial tattoos began their meeting with discussions about the preparations they were making for war with the Beothuk. "We should spare no effort in acquiring more weapons," a stripe-faced councilman said without standing. "With the White Father's wrought-iron arrowheads, our shafts can pierce through shields as easily as bone. With his hearth-steel spear points and tomahawk blades, our warriors will have a great advantage over our stone-wielding enemies." The other councilmen nodded serenely to cast their votes of approval for the man's motion. Once they had made their agreement unanimous, the councilman fell silent so that another councilman could bring an issue to everyone's attention. "The surest way to purchase these new weapons is by having the men mine more iron ore and then delivering it to Vinland," the other councilman advised. "It is a resource that waits abundant in the earth. I suggest we double the number of workers, even triple it if we can commit that many laborers." "Let's not do that at the expense of stockpiling our food supplies," a raccoon-eyed councilman warned. "Hard times may be ahead. We cannot protect our fields as securely as we do our women. This winter may prove to be a hungry one indeed, especially if the Beothuk manage to burn this season's maize while it is still ripening in the fields." The councilman that advised more mining nodded emphatically to agree with his counterpart. "You speak wisdom, damning beaver. There are Vinlander mouths to feed as well. We should send emissaries to advise them to ration their supplies and stock extra hay for their livestock. Some of them are skilled hunters. They need to jerk as many caribou as they can harvest." The councilman that Fastillion had first met when he landed his sailboat brought up an issue relevant to him. The son of the White Father has made a servant of a Beothuk slave girl he captured at the Battle of Table Rock. He shackled her legs in manacles of iron and keeps her blindfolded when out of doors during the daylight hours. I have agreed to this so that he be given a chance to plead her case before the council. "We should cloud her eyes permanently," one of the councilmen suggested, "so that she will be unable to run away to tell anyone about us. The loyalty of a woman is too fickle to be trustworthy, especially a woman who was once a slave to the Beothuk. We are at war, and at such times, leniency is suicidal. It would be prudent to cripple her at the very least, another of them recommended. The very nature of shackles is that she could remove them. I watched him hammer the pins in place, the first said in defense of his original agreement with Fastillion. Considering that Twisted Feathers is keeping her in his home and the service the boy has done for us, I asked that my fellow elders allow for this special concession. The council was hesitant to agree, but they eventually relented, then dropped the matter entirely. Fastillion realized that he had wagered his credibility on Silvertree remaining loyal to him. She had fooled him once before. He made a silent commitment to himself to keep a close eye on her. Having concluded their other business, the council called on Twisted Feathers to give an accounting of his encounter with the Beothuk. The veteran warrior stood to address the council. After the White Father's son and I finished skinning Red Grin, and then we stretched the hide on a frame for tanning, we sailed in his boat back to Leifsbuda along with my daughter. Upon our arrival, we learned that 3 of their fishermen had not returned home from a trip to the north coast of the island. Men who had gone to investigate returned a short while later. They had found the men's boat and the bloody signs that they had met with violence. They also discovered a blood-caked spear of Micmac design. It was for that reason that their council of chieftains assumed that we had somehow been behind the killings. The council took his information with grim expressions. Since cunning assaults meant to shatter alliances was nothing new to them, they took it as proof that the Beothuk were not only skilled warriors, but also devious strategists. A wrinkled old councilman with a complex arrangement of spiral tattoos on his face asked, "What did you do to dissuade them?" Twisted Feathers replied, "After I explained that we were obviously not part of their problem, I insinuated myself as the solution. I volunteered the White Father's son and myself to go investigate the matter. We then returned here to leave my daughter in a place of safety and also enlist the services of Spotted Crow and 10 Badgers." He went on to describe how they had searched the ruins of Hope Village and then discovered the site where the Beothuk had strung up Oleg to blood-eagle him by pulling his lungs out through holes they had cut into his back. The council learned about how his team had found the piece of Beothuk arrow that Harold had shrewdly concealed in the broken bough of a tree. So armed with that clue, Twisted Feathers had then deduced that Beothuk had been the actual culprits. It was only a guess that they were headed for Table Rock Shrine, Twisted Feathers explained. It was the closest site I could think of they would find holy enough for making a blood sacrifice. The council invited Spotted Crow and 10 Badgers to participate in the recounting. Together with Twisted Feathers, they told the council elders how Fastillion took position on the cliff over the shrine while they secured posts at the other 3 compass points down in the woods. "We delayed our attack because a second war party joined the first," Spotted Crow informed the gathering. "It was Fastillion who opened the hostilities by cutting one of them down with an arrow. After that, we called down the thunder and blood sprayed everywhere as our arrows took them out one after another. Both the shamans went after Fastillion," 10 Badgers said. "We were so busy fighting in the woods that we lost track of them for a while." Twisted Feathers continued the tale. "We had set trip lines in the gaps between trees. As we retreated deeper into the forest, we lured them into the traps, then dispatched them as they stumbled. I wish to hear of these shamans, these war captains," one of the councilmen specified. He straightened up, then craned his neck to find Fastillion. "Come here, boy. Tell us what you saw and did. Only you know what happened atop the cliff." Fastillion hopped down from the dais to the flagstone floor of the sunken council chamber. He stood behind Twisted Feathers to speak. They were not natural men. Both the shaman with the deer antler headdress and the buffalo-horned shaman had eyes that glowed red. Their voices had the timbre of forest predators. Antlerman climbed the cliff as if he were a squirrel. "It was only by luck that I broke the pendant from around his neck. After I did, his power fled, and then he was mortal. I threw him to the edge of the cliff and then kicked him over as he tried to hang on. The fall took the rest of the fight out of him." The elder asked, "And what of the bison shaman?" Fastillion continued, "I wounded him with arrows, but they did not slow him. He circled about to the narrow escarpment that gave access to the cliff. He would have trapped me there if Twisted Feathers had not come along, then challenged him." The councilman asked for clarification. "Was it not you that killed him?" "I did," Fastillion confessed, "but only because my 3 companions provided me with the opportunity by battling him. With my sword Bull Tamer, I cut the sinew that held the pendant around his neck. After that, the shaman succumbed to his many lethal wounds and collapsed." So, the oldest of the councilmen observed, the son of the White Father has the spirit gift, and they guide him. How else could one unshorn boy manage to slay two of the Windigo's black shamans? Many on the council agreed, but they said nothing of their actual thoughts. The three Micmac warriors told the rest of their details about the fighting at the shrine. Unlike Norsemen, the Micmac warriors were true to the actual events and avoided any embellishment. They did not seek to aggrandize anyone or slander foes. Their goal was to make sure the council got the purest, unmodified information on which they could wisely base future decisions. Fastillion finished the story by telling the council how he found Silvertree in the cave after the battle. He honestly explained how she had worn red Beothuk body paint and had tied herself to pretend that she had been their prisoner. He told them all that Harold had informed him of as well, so that the council learned about how the Beothuk war party attacked the three Norsemen in the first place. Silvertree did threaten to cut my throat that first night, Fastillion admitted in his most difficult disclosure. I now realize that her actual intention was to kill herself. It was the wise counseling of my father that turned her to the Christian God. She is no longer a danger to anyone, herself included. Just when Fastillion thought his interrogation was over, the oldest councilman asked him a final question. Did you destroy the pendants the war shamans wore? Did you ever try one of them on? Did anyone else? Fastillion choked down his shock and did his best to answer confidently. He was not sure what force had motivated him to keep them such a secret. Now that the council was bringing them out into the light, it seemed obvious to him how imprudent it had been for him to maintain possession of such dangerous artifacts. No, I still have them, he confessed. They seemed like worthy souvenirs, so I kept them. The man asked with untypical emotion, "Where are they now? We must see them." "I left them at Twisted Feather's roundhouse," he answered. "They're in a pouch on my arrow quiver. Do you want me to go and get them?" The old man shook his head. "No, not yet. You said that you believed that the pendants imparted powerful magic to their wearers. Do you still think that's true?" "I know it to be true," Fastillion readily admitted. "I can't say that they would do the same for anyone else. I must admit that I'm ignorant of such things. That is why I have never touched them since the moment I first put them away." "You were both wise and foolish," said another of the councilmen. "Some totems can allow the shaman who made them to see and hear those things that are happening in the vicinity of their creations. It could be that you have provided them a window through which to examine not only your home village, but now ours as well." A different councilman concurred. "We know of other totems that can contain the spirit of a deceased shaman and allow him to possess the body of any who are foolish enough to put on their device. Had you been stupid enough to test the magic of the pendants, you might have become the unwitting vessel for a Beothuk shaman of great power." "We shall send someone home with you to collect the pendants," said a different councilman. "Whatever harm has been done will not be worsened by a modest delay. While my colleagues are quick to point out the potential evils that the pendants might be capable of, it is also feasible that they are of some beneficial use to us, but that has yet to be determined." Yet another councilman spoke to Fastillion. "This council wishes to recognize you for your accomplishments as a man. For your killing of 3 Beothuk warriors, you have earned the right to wear a headdress adorned with 3 wing feathers from an eagle. More so, for killing the 2 Beothuk war shamans, you earned the right to add 2 tail feathers from a golden eagle. Those are our highest awards for the slaying of a foe. Though you are not officially a member of our tribe or our nation, your unprecedented accomplishment for a warrior so young has earned you a place among us if you petition for it." "I do ask to become a member of the tribe," Fastillion declared unreservedly. The outer circle of warriors stamped their feet in recognition and applause. The familiar councilman silenced them. "Unfortunately, we cannot give you the rewards you have earned as a man and a warrior, because you are still a long-haired boy in the eyes of this council." The old man called out to everyone present, "Does anyone here say that this boy is worthy to accept the trials to become a man?" Twisted Feathers stood up and shouted clearly, "I, Twisted Feathers, say that he is ready and deserving. I fought beside him in the battle and he saved my life." "As do I," Ten Badgers called out in support while standing up from his seat. "And I," added Spotted Crow, doing the same. "Then prepare him," the councilman declared. "He shall be given his opportunity." The familiar councilman spoke to Twisted Feathers. "Take him to collect the pendants from your home. Be sure to keep them covered while you carry them. Since you have been raising him and know all that is required, it falls upon you to prepare him." Before sending Fastillion away with his mentor, the councilman addressed him a final time. "Is there anything you wish to say to this council while you have our attentions?" Fastillion felt intimidated by the penetrating gazes of so many great men. He gathered up his confidence so his voice wouldn't show his unease. Earlier this evening, I paid the bride price for Raining Sunshine to take her as my wife. I ask for the blessing of the Council of Elders for us to build a home and raise a family in your community. No long hair has the right to marry a woman, the oldest councilman decreed. If you should pass the challenges of becoming a man, we shall authorize your marriage ceremony and bless the union by our participation. The wedding of a descendant of Black Winter Ferret is a great occasion worthy of special celebration. Twisted Feathers got up, then led Fastillion back to his home. They went in to find the two women busily cutting and stitching doeskin for Raining Sunshine's wedding tunic. The council approves of your marriage, Twisted Feathers told his daughter. Do not waste your effort. Our village's finest seamstresses shall craft your wedding tunic. They have promised a celebration that will be a spectacle worth remembering for years to come. Fastillion found a buckskin bag, then deftly transferred the two pendants into it from his quiver pouch. Here, he gave the bag to Twisted Feathers. They're inside. I'll be back soon, his father-in-law replied. When I return, we'll begin the first ritual for your manhood ceremony. From this moment until it is over, you must refrain from partaking of any food, women, or your wine. Take a bath, then dress in a clean loincloth. He headed out with the bag. The women abandoned their tunic-making project, then instead busied themselves with preparing Fastillion for his ritual. Before he headed down to the river to bathe, Fastillion got a long leather thong, then tied one end of it to a link at the center of Silvertree's manacle chain. With it, she could use the strength in her arms to lift the chain, which would make it easier for her to walk. Raining Sunshine blindfolded Silvertree, and then the three of them walked through the village down to the riverbank. The moonlight was strong enough to allow them to see. Cultivated groves of berry bushes surrounded one of the village's washing areas and obscured all sight of the community. Fastillion took off Silvertree's blindfold, then stayed close to her while they bathed, so that there was no chance the weight of her manacles would drown her. The women worked together to wash him before they cared for themselves. Silvertree found it difficult to restrain her amorous hands, while Raining Sunshine's shy inexperience still inhibited her, so that she could make only a tentative inspection of her future husband. Fastillion regretted the stipulation that he was to restrain himself from enjoying his newly purchased fiancée. Her stupefying beauty and bashful assessment were more than enough to raise an unmistakable display of his desire. At first, she felt appalled and shrank away from his flagrant manifestation of affability. Gentle coercion from Silvertree helped her to get in touch with the root of her apprehension and embrace the potential of their upcoming postnuptials. A smattering of whispered instructions from Silvertree led the tittering Raining Sunshine into toying with the notion of soothing his vigor, but they abandoned the game before defying the edicts about Fastillion's preparations for his ritual. Once they were back at the roundhouse, Raining Sunshine dressed Fastillion in a loincloth and then artfully painted him with black stripes of grease paint. Fastillion stood passively but felt excitement while his wife worked on him. The marriage ceremony didn't hold great appeal for him since it was primarily for the display and aggrandizement of his beautiful wife. As she completed his final preparations for beginning his manhood ceremony, he had an inkling of the excitement she would be feeling. It was as though his old life was ending and a new one was beginning, which in many ways was the truth. The lessons of childhood coursed through his mind as his life's experiences boiled up within him. Twisted Feathers had taught him the ways of the hunter and woodsman. His stepfather had given him many unique gifts, such as a literate education, taught him to sail, to work iron, and to restrain his actions with morality. Silvertree had taught him that bliss could come from unfettering one's true desires and bringing them to fruition. With Raining Sunshine, he felt the joy of being part of a unity that was much greater than their individual selves were alone. It was a union that would produce children and make them part of the eternal chain of life. Fastillion became distracted from his thoughts by Silvertree's happy expression as she watched her mistress decorate him. He had confined her indoors and dressed her in heavy chains. A hostile people surrounded her on all sides, and Fastillion even denied her physical companionship, but still she offered him nothing but affection. Raining Sunshine noticed him watching her servant. "She's willing to return to the Beothuk just to protect you," she told him in Norse. "Part of me wants to believe that it's just a trick to make us let her go home, but somehow I know better. The elders would never allow it anyway, but I know what you mean." He gave his fiancée an amused smile. "I'll be gone for a while. Can I trust you two sleeping together without me?" When she pursed up in a fluster of embarrassment, he couldn't help but laugh. "You know, I'm just kidding." You're talking about me, Silvertree interrupted, aren't you? It's nothing bad, Fastillion reassured her. I was just telling her to be careful not to scuff her ankles on your manacles when you sleep tonight. You're not kidding, Silvertree complained, reaching down to adjust the rabbit pelt in her right cuff. These things are killers. As to them sleeping together, Silvertree just naturally assumed it, since she wouldn't willingly be anywhere else. Twisted Feathers returned, then summoned Fastillion to come outside with him. Fastillion felt nervous, not knowing what would happen next. He embraced his fiancée and then Silvertree before he headed out with his father-in-law. They walked through the village without conversation on the way down to the river. In a secluded grove near the water's edge stood a miniature birch-bark wigwam. A thin tail of smoke streamed from the hole at the top of the support poles. A talented artist had painted the structure with intricate images of forest animals, birds, and river creatures. You must go inside, Twisted Feathers told him. Fastillion didn't understand the purpose. What's in there? Only what you take with you, he answered cryptically. Fastillion asked, how long am I supposed to stay in there? His mentor instructed, you must purify yourself for 3 days. You must not come out until I tell you that it is time. If you do, you will have failed to complete the first ritual, and a boy you shall remain. At certain times, someone will place more wood for your fire beneath the door flap. When they do, you must burn the wood. If you fail to burn the wood, if you speak to your attendant, or if you call out for help, the ritual will be over, and you will have failed. At other times, your attendant will put in bowls of ceremonial drink that you must consume entirely. When you must relieve yourself, you may use the empty vessels for doing so, placing them out under the flap as necessary. The instructions were simple enough that Fastillion had no more questions. He thought it sounded rather simple and unchallenging. Twisted Feathers held open the entrance for him to go in, and as the flap shifted aside, heat and smoke wafted out from the cramped interior. Fastillion realized that he was going to have to smoke himself like meat they prepared for long-term storage. He was wise enough to realize that the ceremony had already begun. If he complained or hesitated, it would only cause him to appear cowardly. After he had gone in and Twisted Feathers closed the flap, Fastillion had nothing to do but sit down, since he didn't even have room to stand. The heat and the smoke were stifling, but not so severe that he was going to suffocate. It wasn't long before he started to perspire. In time, the sweat began to pour from his body. The first interruption to his sweltering boredom came in the form of a bowl of drink that someone placed inside under the flap. He didn't hesitate to guzzle it all down. The beverage was mostly water, but also seemed to contain the juice of berries, grapes, or other fruit. More waiting preceded another bowl of drink and then another, before he received more wood for his dwindling fire. It must have been late in the night by the time he started feeling tired enough to want to sleep. Fastillion found that the heat, the smoke, and the hard ground were not conducive to him resting. Fastillion received bowls of drink with frequent regularity. He imbibed a tremendous volume of fluids, but sweated so profusely that he rarely even needed to relieve himself. Morning came, and he still hadn't been able to sleep. A strange, waking drowsiness clouded his thoughts and made it difficult for him to monitor the passage of time. The sun increased the temperature inside the wigwam, but it was already so hot that it made little difference. Each delivery of drink or wood made him hope that his ordeal was finally over, only it never was. By the night after Fastillion's first day, he managed to sleep briefly, only to have his attendant disturb him by delivering another bowl of his beverage. A kind of delirium eroded his mind, so that his waking and sleeping states crept closer together until they merged into something in between. Just drinking his bowls of ceremonial juice and putting wood on the fire became a test of his concentration.